good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here. And I'll try to tell you about the story, which is quite, let's say, an example of what we do at the Office for Outer Space Affairs, but in general, it's also an example of what could be of interest for you as a young generation dealing with space activities. Well, in my early childhood, space sector was really a sort of a baby. We had two countries really having a bit of a conflict, if I may say so, and trying to be the first in a lot of activities. I mean, who could have been the first sent a satellite in orbit, the first human in orbit, the first humans on the moon, the first space station. So in reality, this list could go for a bit. Well, in reality, there was also the understanding that the space sector was for wealthy countries, involving really billions of dollars of investments and thousands of really dedicated and well-educated individuals capable of really breaking the boundaries of technologies and humanity, both on ground and the skies. And virtually every technology had to be developed from scratch. But then, what happened was that we really had 6 decades of activities since the first satellite was launched. And now, what you see here is a sort of a legacy of all this work which has been done. Okay, you could say is a small thing on a table. Probably this is the comment of people outside the space community, but us, the space community, okay, for sure, this is a CubeSat, 1-unit CubeSat, which can do great things, even if it has a very small size. However, I see in it still an inspiration, still an opportunity, and if you want, a dream. Why? Well, because space has been really an inspiration, still an inspiration for everyone, for a lot of people in the last decades. And in the space sector, we have been able to develop things like CubeSats, which allow, in a way, to have more and more players in the space field, because space is becoming more affordable, also thanks to this kind of developments. And therefore, we together, we can really push the boundaries of knowledge, creativity, and ingenuity even further. And in reality, the space sector has been changing so much that we probably were not expecting this, at least a few years ago. So I've been really, from a personal standpoint, a professional standpoint, I can say that I've been very lucky, because in my more than 30 years in the space sector, I've been able to really grasp and witness all those changes from really first row. And I've been working on a lot of different topics in space exploration, innovation, and a lot of different fields. Yet, when I became the director of the Office for Outer Space Affairs a little bit more than 5 years ago, my perspective really became truly global, which was not the case before. So now when I look at the planets, moons, or stars, or galaxies, well, I don't see only the side of developing a spacecraft, developing and putting together international cooperation in order to be able to develop and manage and launch and operate spacecrafts. but I also see an opportunity. I would say rather I see an opportunity to really use space-based data and infrastructures to improve the quality of life of as much as individuals possible on the surface of the Earth. And that's the place, that's the moment in which the Office for Outer Space Affairs really enters into the equation, because that's a moment in which our role, which is to bring the benefits of space to humankind, improving the access to space for everyone, everywhere, that's the place, that's the moment in which we really have a role in this equation. I would say quite an important role, also because we do that really leveraging on international cooperation. And we are lucky enough to have a lot of international partners really sharing our values and therefore working with us in our efforts. So, how we started with this very interesting example, which is a program that we decided in 2015 to start in cooperation with Japan, in particular with JAXA, which is the Japanese Space Exploration Agency. So we decided that we wanted together to create a capacity building program for developing countries. And so we started discussions at the beginning of 2015 until in September 2015 we signed a memorandum of understanding between UNOOSA and JAXA to really be able to develop the so-called KiboCube program, with the idea really to help developing countries to be able to launch 1 unit CubeSats from the International Space Station, in particular using the deployment facility on board the KiboCube. So we issued an announcement of opportunity, we made a selection, and the team, the first team winning this selection was a team from the University of Nairobi in Kenya. And this is the announcement of this, of the team winning this selection. This is Mexico, ISC 2016 at the USA booth. And you see myself, you see Koichi Wakata, one famous Japanese astronaut, and the professor from the University of Kenya winning the competition. Then we had, you know, when you develop a satellite, then you have a certain number of discussions, sometimes quite also tight, because we really wanted that the satellite had to be developed on time, on track, and everything should have been good. And so that's the team in Kenya, working very hard in trying to match the deadlines, really fulfilling the milestones, because they felt that this was, I mean, these young students, they really felt that it was not only a question of, you know, they didn't want only to be proud of themselves, so they were not doing this only for them, not only for their institution, for the University of Nairobi, but mainly for their country. Because in this way, Kenya has been able to become one of the players in the space business. And so, after the development was the moment in January 2018 when the team from the University of Nairobi met the JAXA people at the Tsukuba Space Center, and this is the moment in which the satellite was officially handed over. Well, you could say, okay, it was done. No, it was just the first part of the story, because then we had to follow a certain number of steps to allow them to be able to fly. And so, clearly, the satellite, the 1 unit CubeSat from Kenya had to be arranged for shipment and to go to the International Space Station, together with other 2 satellites, in particular were 1 satellite from Turkey and the other one from Costa Rica. Until you see here, there's a wonderful picture. You have Tingle and Kanai, the 2 astronauts in the cupola of the ISS, waiting for the Dragon capsule, having on board this 1 unit CubeSat from the University of Nairobi, waiting for the Dragon capsule to dock to the space station. And when I saw this picture, I have to say it was a little bit, let's say with a bit of emotion, because the flag of the United Nations close to the flag of Kenya was the first time that this, something like that happened. And it was quite an important moment. I've been developing, I don't know how many satellites. I don't know how many astronauts have been managing in my life, but I can tell you this moment was particularly intense from the emotional standpoint, because we were doing really history here. And that's a moment, the May 11th, 2018, when the satellite was deployed from the Kibo module from the ISS, having Kenya becoming a space country, and it's the first satellite ever launched in history under the auspices of the United Nations. So as you can imagine, I'm quite proud of that. This has been done under my tenure as the director of the Office for Outer Space Affairs. And pictures like that are really interesting, I believe, for all of us. What really counts is international cooperation. This could have been impossible without a strong cooperation with JAXA, and it's also a clear example of the work that we do, where we put together different stakeholders in a sort of a triangular approach. But I have to say, Kenya is not only a new space actor, it's also a very responsible one, because in order to be able to register the satellite and comply with the registration convention that we discharge responsibility of the Secretary General, maintaining the register of the objects launched into outer space, they created the space agency, they decided, they approved the National Space Law, and finally, they registered their teeny satellite. So this is really an example that we should follow. And so just to conclude, I would like to say that from my perspective, it's not only a good history, I mean a good story to be used in order to explain how good are the relationships that we are able to develop, but it's really telling you how important is the patience that you can put in this kind of efforts of all the players who worked for this success. So I believe that is just an example, as I said, but a very good example also for you in terms of how important is international cooperation, how important is to be all in the same boat, in a way trying to improve our quality of life all over the world. And let's work together, and that's what we do, but I believe you can really have a big role on that. Let's work together to, let's say, for a better future, because at the very end, the future is yours. Thank you very much.